My mother tried to give my son away without my permission. It all started on an ordinary Friday afternoon. I had just picked up my 3-year-old son Jake from daycare and was planning a quiet evening at home. Jake and I lived alone in a small apartment, and while things weren't always easy as a single mom, we had a good routine going. My mother, who lived about 10 minutes away, was usually helpful, watching Jake when I had to work late or needed a break. We had always been close, especially since my father passed away when I was a teenager. I thought I could trust her with anything, but I was about to find out just how wrong I was. That evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin Lisa. "Are you okay?" it read. Confused, I replied, "Yes, why?" Her response made my heart stop. "Your mom was at Aunt Carol's today. She said you were struggling with Jake and were thinking about letting your sister and her husband adopt him." I dropped my phone. I couldn't believe what I was reading. My sister and her husband adopt Jake? Where had this idea even come from? I had never even considered such a thing, not for a second. Panic rose in my chest as I tried to call my mom, but it went straight to voicemail. I called again. No answer. I felt the room closing in around me. What had she done? The next morning, I drove straight to my mother's house, barely waiting for her to open the door before storming in. "What is going on?" I demanded, my voice trembling with anger. "Why is Lisa asking me if I'm okay? Why did she think I was considering giving Jake away?" My mother didn't look surprised. In fact, she seemed prepared for this conversation. "Honey?" she started, using the soft, condescending tone that always made my skin crawl. "You know how hard things have been for you. I just thought maybe it would be best for Jake if he had a more stable home. Your sister and her husband are doing so well, they could give him things you can't." I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" I shouted. "I never said I wanted to give Jake up. I'm his mother and he is my son. How could you even think of something like this?" "Listen," she said, still calm and collected. "I'm only trying to help. I've seen how tired you are, how hard you're working. This way, Jake would have a full-time family and you could still see him whenever you want." I felt like I'd been slapped. "This isn't your decision to make," I screamed. "How could you go behind my back like this? What did you tell Aunt Carol? What did you tell my sister?" My mother hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything I needed to know. She had gone further than just talking. "What did you do?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet now. "I may have reached out to a lawyer," she admitted. "I just wanted to explore the options. I thought once you saw how much easier your life could be, you'd understand." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own mother had talked to a lawyer about giving my son away. "You don't get to make that decision," I said, tears stinging my eyes. "Jake is my child. You have no right." My mother's face hardened. "Well, I'm his grandmother, and I care about his well-being. If you can't see that, maybe you're not thinking clearly. Maybe a court needs to decide what's best for Jake." I couldn't breathe. Was she seriously threatening to take me to court over my own son? "Get out," I said, my voice shaking. "Get out of my house and stay away from Jake and me. You don't get to decide what's best for us." The next few weeks were a blur. I cut off all contact with my mother, blocked her number, and stopped visiting her. My sister tried to reach out, insisting that she had no idea what Mom was planning, but I wasn't ready to hear it. I didn't trust anyone. Every time the doorbell rang or my phone buzzed, my heart would race, wondering if it was another attempt to take Jake away from me. One day, I received a letter from a family lawyer. My mother had officially filed for temporary custody, claiming I was an unfit mother. She cited everything from my financial struggles to my stress levels, painting a picture of me as a woman on the edge who couldn't take care of her own child. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I hired a lawyer of my own, and the battle lines were drawn. Every day was filled with stress and fear, wondering if today would be the day someone knocked on my door to take Jake away. My lawyer assured me that my mother didn't have a strong case, but just the thought of fighting this battle was exhausting. The day of the court hearing, I walked into the courtroom feeling like I was walking to my own execution. My mother was there looking every bit the concerned grandmother. My sister and her husband sat beside her, avoiding my gaze. The judge listened as my mother's lawyer painted me as a struggling, overworked single mother who wasn't able to give her son the care he needed. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "Your Honor," I said, "I love my son more than anything in this world. I work hard to provide for him, and yes, things are not always easy, but that doesn't make me unfit. It makes me human. My mother has no right to try and take my child away from me just because she doesn't agree with my life choices." The judge nodded, listening carefully. "Do you have any evidence that suggests your mother's concerns are unfounded?" I presented letters from Jake's daycare, testifying to how well-behaved and happy he was. I showed my work records, proving that I had a steady job. My lawyer presented character witnesses who spoke about how dedicated I was to my son. By the end of the hearing, I felt a small glimmer of hope. After what felt like an eternity, the judge finally spoke. "I find no evidence to support the claim that the child is in any danger or that the mother is unfit. Custody will remain with the biological mother, and I strongly advise the family to seek mediation to resolve their differences outside of court." The relief was overwhelming. I had won. Jake was staying with me. My mother stormed out of the courtroom without a word, and for a moment I felt a pang of sadness. This was my own mother, and she had tried to destroy my life. It's been 6 months since that day, and while things are still tense, I'm trying to rebuild my life. I haven't spoken to my mother since the court case. My sister and I are slowly mending our relationship, though there's still a lot of hurt to work through. As for Jake, he's happy and healthy, blissfully unaware of the battle that nearly tore us apart. Every day is a reminder of the strength I didn't know I had, and the lengths I'm willing to go to protect my son. If I've learned anything, it's that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can betray you in the worst ways. But no matter what, I'll never let anyone take Jake away from me.